One of the useful things about this forum is we're all vulnerable. But it's almost like if you're healthy and you get sick, you have more antibodies and resistance. And if you're poor or if you're already weakened and you get sick, then you're more vulnerable, right? There are some communities we know that are more vulnerable, and the kids there are more vulnerable. And part of what I hope this discussion does is to remind us that just as it could be Malia or Sasha, or Kari's kids, or any of our kids. Those kids who don't always look like us and don't live in the same neighborhood as us, they're just as precious. And their parents are much less equipped than you, sir. Or I would be in terms of dealing with this stuff. And we got to get them help, too. So I think the doctor earlier talked about the importance of jobs and economic development and broad-based approaches so that growth helps everybody. There is some connection to substance abuse and the vulnerabilities that communities have. And we've got, and let's face it, part of the reason West Virginia probably has more cases partly has to do with the economics that have been taking place in some of these communities. Which is why it's so important for us to also push on that front, as well. Doctor, any thoughts on that question about the vulnerability of children and how we can get to them quicker, more effectively? Dr. Brumaj, yes, Mr. President. One of the things that I'm hoping to kick off here. Next week is a discussion about probably one of the most important studies that Most people have never heard of called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. The baseline study was done with 17,000 people at Kaiser Permanente in San Diego, California. And what they found out was that when people score high on a scale of 10 questions, everybody has a score from 0 to 10, the higher you are on that scale, the more likely you are to have problems with addiction for drug use. With smoking, with obesity, with all the public health problems that we're really seeing right now. I think a trauma-informed community and an open discussion about where these problems are going is the first step in addressing why people are using drugs in the first place. And, Mr. President, you're absolutely right. What happens in those early years and reaching out to those families who we know are at risk and devoting the kind of resources that we would need to is really the first step, I think, in really truncating this. Because if we don't, what we're going to be doing 25, 30 years from now is having the same discussion about why these kids are abusing drugs, obese, and so on and so forth. So I think that that's a really important part, and to have that sort of open discussion about that. Because it happens in good families, as well as in families who are disadvantaged. But I agree with you, it happens probably more often in families that are disadvantaged. And it perpetuates the cycle of poverty, as well. President Obama, and for those of us who are more advantaged. The disadvantaged communities create the markets that then seep into the more advantaged communities, right? So the reason we have a fire department is because if your neighbor's house is burning down, you don't want to just leave it to the neighbor to figure out whether or not he can afford to put out the fire. You have an interest in making sure that fire gets put out before it burns your house. Well, the same is true with drugs. That child who is poor, you may think, well, I don't have to worry about that kid. That's not my kid. My kid is going to be okay. But if you start seeing more and more kids who are more and more involved in the drug trade, over time that migrates into every community. And that's part of the reason why we got to care about every kid out here and make sure they're vulnerable. Chief. Chief Webster, and if I can add also on that issue to the question. That Handle with Care program Ruth Lawn Elementary is I don't believe it's not in the city of Charleston. But the Handle with Care is about to go statewide if it hasn't. But the Handle with Care program will fix some of those issues. I know we're talking about addiction and maybe some others that are born with addiction. Well, the Handle with Care may not fix that, but it will at least alert the proper authorities that child is struggling because of some trauma or substance abuse in the home. President Obama, I think it's a really smart program. I got to tell you, before I came down I hadn't heard about it. And I'd really like to see us advertise this more across the country and adopt this as a best practice. Director Botticelli, I want to thank everyone for coming today. And I want to particularly thank our incredible panel here been sharing their experience. But I think also giving us some ideas. And your innovation I think can really help spur replication around the country. So I really want to thank you for doing that. And just for closing comments, I'll ask the President to say a few things. President Obama, well, I've been talking too much. I want to say three things. One is we're just talking about the Handle with Care program and the gentleman here talked about his daughter's lives being saved by an EMT and police officers on the spot. Our law enforcement officers sometimes get a lot of attention when something bad happens. They don't get enough attention every single day when they're out there saving lives. Doing the right thing, looking out for people. And when I've talked to law enforcement, there is an incredible sense of compassion and empathy. And most folks aren't in there just to try to be hard-nosed. Most of the time, they're just trying to help folks. And so, number one, they deserve our thanks. But number two, the more we're supporting innovative policing that isn't just thinking. My job is to clean up a mess after it happens, but rather, I'm part of the community and I need to be part of preventing crime and stuff from happening in the first place. I think we have to encourage that mindset in a lot of law enforcement. I'm really proud of them, so they deserve some applause for that. Second thing I want to emphasize, we live in a time when our politics get so polarized. We got talk radio and we got the internet. And it seems like every year, sort of the rhetoric ratchets up about how this party is destroying the country. Or those folks are unpatriotic, or they're evil, or what have you. And I am deeply encouraged by the fact that on this issue, we're seeing bipartisanship and we haven't seen some of that rhetoric. And I hope that that continues because that's how we'll solve this problem. And the elected officials who are here, they represent, I think, that best tradition. And I just want to commend them for that, because that's how we'll be able to get stuff. Done both at the congressional level and at the state and local levels, as well. And then, finally, I just want to once again thank Carrie, the parents who we heard from here. We are just so grateful that you're willing to share your story. It will. Save lives. And we want you to know that you're in our thoughts and prayers. And we want to just give you all the encouragement in the world. But just as importantly, or more importantly, we want to give your children encouragement. Because they got great parents and these things could happen to any of us. But we want them to know that we love them and are looking out for them, as well. Thank you, everybody. Barack Obama. President-elect victory speech. Delivered November 4, 2008, Chicago, Illinois. Hello, Chicago. if there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer. It's the answer told by lines that stretched around schools and churches in numbers this nation has. Never seen. By people who waited 3 hours and 4 hours, many for the very first time in their lives. Because they believed that this time must be different. That their voices could be that difference. It's the answer spoken by young and old, rich and poor, Democrat and Republican, black, white. Hispanic, Asian, Native American, gay, straight, disabled and not disabled Americans who sent a message to the world that we have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are, and always will be, the United States of America. It's the answer that led those who have been told for so long by so many to be cynical. And fearful, and doubtful about what we can achieve to put their hands on the arc of history and bend it once more toward the hope of a better day. It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America. A little bit earlier this evening, I received an extraordinarily gracious call from Senator McCain. Senator McCain fought long and hard in this campaign. And he's fought even longer and harder for the country that he loves. he has endured sacrifices for America that most of us cannot begin to imagine. We are better off for the service rendered by this brave and selfless leader. I congratulate him. I congratulate Governor Palin for all that they've achieved. And I look forward to working with them to renew this nation's promise in the months ahead.